In an ever-changing city, Fraunces Tavern remains timeless. This lower Manhattan treasure is often cited as the borough's oldest surviving building, where George Washington delivered a famous farewell to his victorious troops at the end of the Revolutionary War. But it's also home to a wonderful museum with a new permanent exhibition.
This is the Birch Trials at Fraunces Tavern Museum.
A piece of Black history.
This is a story that is new to a lot of people.
Which tells the story of Black Americans who risked their lives to enlist as British soldiers, all based on what ultimately amounted to a broken promise made by a vanquished British army.
These are people's actual stories.
Meticulously chronicling the pursuit of freedom, born out of a reluctant compromise made by the Founding Fathers to allow black slaves and indentured servants to evacuate with the Brits following the war.
Greatest emancipation in American history until the Civil War.
And while it was indeed a pragmatic move made in order to keep the peace, make no mistake, the decision also tragically kept the larger institution of slavery intact for nearly another century. Melissa Lauer is the museum's education and public program manager.
This is the foundation for the freedoms that are going to be built upon throughout American history.
That foundation formed against all odds by some 3,000 brave black men and women during the so-called Birch Trials, many of them held right here at Fraunces Tavern. Their names compiled in a provocatively titled work of non-fiction.
The Book of Negroes.
But to understand the significance of that book and the Birch Trials, it helps to first understand that broken promise, made years earlier in 1775 at the start of the Revolutionary War by Lord Dunmore, then Royal Governor of Virginia, to any black slave and indentured servant willing to take a chance.
He guarantees them their freedom. This is the kind of critical piece of this proclamation where Dunmore states, "And I do hereby further declare all indentured servants, Negroes, or others appertaining to rebels, free that are able and willing to bear arms, they joining His Majesty's troops as soon as may be."
Basically, you come fight for us, we'll give you your freedom.
Exactly.
Except they lost.
Except they lost. And that's going to change everything.
Complicating matters, pro-American language in the Treaty of Paris made it clear the defeated Britannic Majesty would only be allowed to safely withdraw its people from the colonies only if it did so, quote, without carrying away any Negroes. Which brings us to the Birch Trials, a joint British-American commission that set up shop in 1783 at Fraunces Tavern. As defeated British forces packed up to evacuate, black loyalist men and women who previously pledged their loyalty to the crown in the hopes of escaping slavery showed up at the tavern to argue their case, why they should be allowed to evacuate along with the Brits.
This is a representation of what it might have looked like for people who are coming in and they're preparing to argue their case in the Birch Trials.
So basically someone who looked like me, a black loyalist, would stand here in front of 2 or 3 Brits, 1 American representative, and the burden would be on me to argue why I should be allowed to evacuate with the Brits.
Exactly. You're trying to prove that you meet the criteria to be allowed to get on that boat and retain the freedom that you've potentially been living under for years already.
The freedom that I was promised.
Exactly.
By the Brits.
Exactly.
It seems like as soon as I walked through this door, if I were a black loyalist, the odds were already stacked against me. There's maybe an enslaver here arguing why I shouldn't be allowed to leave. You have the Treaty of Paris saying the Brits can't take their property.
Absolutely. The balance of power is very, very off in a situation like this, right? You're up against odds, but the reality is that this is an opportunity that might never have come across your path otherwise.
It was worth the risk.
Exactly. If you've staked everything on this opportunity, you're probably prepared to do anything you can to hold on to that, to get that certificate, to get on that boat.
So we have 3,000 black loyalists that successfully got one of these certificates.
Yes, the 3,000 who end up being able to be part of this British evacuation.
The names of whom are made up in the Book of Negroes.
Exactly.
During this early, shameful period of American history, when black men and women were routinely torn from their families, stripped of their identities, and thrown into bondage, the Book of Negroes, ironically, serves as an outlier. It carefully catalogs the names, ages, and brief personal histories of the some 3,000 black men and women who won their freedom. But these frayed pages also serve as proof of a single, undeniable example of the Founding Fathers reluctantly finding it acceptable to recognize a black American's right to be and live free.
Having a record like the Book of Negroes has been so invaluable as a historical resource and a genealogical resource.
You wouldn't be blamed for not knowing about the Book of Negroes. While you're still able, as of the filing of this report, to see and read a scanned version on the federal government's National Archives website, we thought, why stop at reading it, when it's still possible to see and hear what its legacy means today, from a living descendant of an 18th century black loyalist listed in the Book of Negroes.
My name is Andrea Davis. My generational descent is 8 generations.
Community Close-Up located Andrea Davis in Nova Scotia, Canada, where a majority of the people listed in the Book of Negroes moved after winning their freedom. She's currently the executive director of the region's Black Loyalist Heritage Center.
My ancestor was Jupiter Farmer. Jupiter Farmer is my generation 1, and I am generation 8. And so as I followed my story about Jupiter Farmer, it's told that he was a slave to a Joseph Harmer in New Jersey.
A local connection to a little-known, invaluable piece of American history spanning hundreds of years and hundreds of miles.
One of the reasons why I wanted to do this story is because, every February, we do these Black history stories, and so often they're just focused on the 1960s, the 1950s, the civil rights movement. They may glance over Reconstruction, the Civil War in America. There may be a paragraph or two about the slave trade. But what we know now is that the Birch trials produced the largest emancipation of Black people prior to the Civil War in the United States.
I'm really saddened and, disheartened that we don't know the story and that we're having these conversations all of these years, beyond. And so the story needs to be told.
For the team here at Community Close-Up, it is our honor and privilege to be able to tell it.
And as being a darker-skinned woman in the community, I feel even closer to these stories, and I'm so glad that I'm able to, educate others, including my family. I feel it every time I walk into this center. I feel my family.
And a huge thanks to our managing editor, Patrick Mason, for recognizing what a great story this could be and flagging it to the team, and to Andrea Davis for taking the time all the way from Nova Scotia to share her incredible family history.